Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS Showdown. I am Rose Layton, and this is my partner in crime,
Colin McCarthy. Great to be back here for another session of discussing all things SaaS.
Yeah, great to
and
see you, Colin.
A lot of identity worries at the moment. We're all having
We're having an identity crisis.
This is
Very
it's
funny
gonna have
of
to be
you.
the title. I know.
Yeah.
I try to do them.
Actually, that would be a good title for the podcast. So, we obviously this episode is coming out far after this incident occurred, but we felt like it was such a high profile incident in our world.
And this incident is the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is.
Because only a few days ago, from recording this, there was more revelations about what
the extent of it and what happened and all that stuff. So so what are we talking about? We're talking about the Okta security breach, which of course, if you have been living under a rock like I have, you basically what happened is Okta had their entire customer support portal compromised. Part of that was due to an employee accessing their personal Google account and saving their work password on that Google account. And that account was compromised. So, but the way it was discovered is one of their customers, who happens to be like a big deal, like beyond trust. Beyond trust. They are a customer of Okta's, and they realized that after submitting a HAR file as part of a support ticket to Okta, that there was some unauthorized stuff happening. So they informed Okta. Okta did not respond very quickly.
Nope.
And
that was back at the start of October 2nd. So
this all happened back in October.
And then another large customer as well saw something very similar, Cloudflare. On October the 18th, discovered.
That's the one that kind of actually kicked it off, right? Like that's the one that they actually paid attention to.
I think so. I think the Okta one happening coincided very much with Okta. The Cloudflare one notice coincided with Okta really taking notice of what Beyond Trust had said, because there was obviously two very large, very security savvy companies saying, "Hey, something's not right in your system." And both of those platforms have their own tooling to stop this. They have very, very experienced and well stocked and staffed security incident response teams.
Right. And they have a truckload of good quality alerts configured on their system.
Yes. Yeah. And also they had utilized policies to limit logins through different IP addresses and that, which, and I think I've read so many documents about this, and this will be a security case study or a class semester. If you're studying security at college, some professor will write this into a real case study. I think that they tried a direct login, and that got blocked due to policies in place. But then they tried accessing the API via the stolen credentials, and that API didn't have. Session cookies can be used to authenticate to official Okta APIs. In many cases, these lack the proper restrictions that apply to the interactive admin console. So, you can. I'm reading that off of the Beyond Trust blog entry that we'll put in the show notes. So you can put restrictions on interactive admin console logins, but you can't apply some of those same policies on your APIs, which then got everybody very worried about APIs and sort of the security about that.
So I guess let's talk real quick about like what the effect of this is. Obviously, Okta had to come out and say, and the headlines have been a little bit like doom and gloom about this, but Okta had to come out and say, like, yeah, every one of our customers potentially is compromised as part of this. Like, what does that mean? And how should people sort of assess whether or not they actually were compromised in a situation like this?
Yes.
Yes. Well, good. Yeah. Okay. So good, like good. to use an example, right. So this specifically affected their customer support portal, which, depending on your organization, will tell you, and how you use that customer support portal will tell you sort of the scope of impact, right? So if you're an Okta customer, you have, like, your IT team has accounts in the support portal, but you don't really put in tickets. And if you do, they're kind of sort of perfunctory, right? Like a couple of like message exchange back and forth, no attachments, anything like that. Probably the impact is minimal, right? Because so your IT team, whatever profile information they have in their support profile, portal profile, so their email address and things like that, and then whatever is in the content of those tickets, that's not that big of a deal. And I think for some organizations, like, yeah, the scope is going to be very small. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Like, you know, it's just not something to worry about. Now, on the other side, which is how like this breach was discovered in the first place, is like, if you're actually troubleshooting something that's kind of difficult and involved and whatever, and you've sent attachments, recordings, log files, HAR files, for example, and you haven't scrubbed those of sensitive data, all of that was accessible. So, and it looks like they actually did target file attachments as part of the support portal. So like, just making sure, you know, it would be worth it to review your support tickets from Okta to see, you know, what have you sent them?
Yeah. And then obviously with those captured, downloaded, compromised HAR files, whatever you want to describe them as, the bad actors were able to use that session cookie information, that OAuth token, whatever, to then try and imitate you and, you know, impersonate you wherever they were in the world and sign into your systems. So that's why a lot of these companies, Cloudflare and Beyond Trust, and it was the other one that I was reading,
and they have something that we've talked about before, which is context-aware access, which is it means they have monitoring and controls about when, where, and how you can log in to certain systems.
Yeah, and also the session length.
Yes.
So if you make the session lengths is a love and hate thing.
Right. Because the shorter they are, the more you have to log in. But the longer they are, the more risk you're at.
Yes. So you have to think, you know, it's a balance between functionality and security, which is the age-old battle that goes on. But yes, I think for admin functions, and certainly for very high accounts that have the ability to, you know, do MFA resets or disable MFA or make any other changes, then it should be that you are made to re-authenticate or have a better re-authentication system, so that if anything is compromised, people can't, you know, sign in as you. But as you said, that context-aware access or geofencing, where the account can be used. If you do have a support center team, you know, maybe you can only do admin functions inside your office. But you know, we don't really have offices anymore.
Yeah, one of the things that Beyond Trust noted was like, they monitor whether someone's attempting to do admin functions through a proxy. So, there's an item in the metadata for an Okta login that says, is proxy true? And so you can use that to configure blocks and alerts that say, no, you're not allowed to do admin functions through a proxy. So,
right. Yes.
like that's just an example of.
Yeah, because we could make the assumption that these bad actors were possibly not in the US, but they would be using a proxy to try and give themselves a US base or a mainland Europe based IP address to do their impersonations. But yeah,
right.
The other big call out that I saw in all of these articles that was doing the sort of the post-mortem of what happened and how a lot of the attacks were mitigated within those companies was the use of hardware security keys. Google have their Titan security keys. There's the YubiKeys, the FIDO standard. Yeah, a physical key. If you have to re-authenticate your login on a brand new device or on a brand new location, and you have to put in an actual physical key, that is a very, very secure way of maintaining, the integrity of those very valuable administration accounts, because other MFA methods can be spoofed, have been spoofed. I use the prompts a lot where it'll pop up and, you have to click the button. I have heard of poor super admins being compromised through prompt fatigue and incorrectly pressing yes. There must be one of my many tabs is trying to re-authenticate for some reason. I'll press yes, and not realizing that it was a bad actor somewhere was had tried to sign in and sent them the push notification. I've heard of stories of like that happening.
Oh yeah, so it happens.
Yeah, I always advocate, and where I work, we advocate for the super admins always use a hardware token or security key.
Yeah.
And there was a big sale on recently. Coincidentally, YubiKey were doing I think they were doing buy one get one free or buy one get one 50% off at the moment. A couple of weeks ago when it was
I have a ton of security keys actually, because I played on with some and got some from previous jobs and what have you. It was an interesting thing, just sort of a tangent, but I got involved in a debate at one point about whether or not it was safe to use physical security keys for both personal and work stuff, like use the same key. And it came into play because I have only one key that works on my phone. So
right, yeah, phones and keys.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to use buy multiple keys, because then I have to I have to tag them and all this stuff to be able to figure out which one's which. But it was just kind of a debate about is that safe? I think it depends. I think it depends on what your risk.
And also, if you leave that employer, are they going to ask for the security key back?
Oh God, I don't know why you would. Do employers actually do that? I think that's more risky.
They might say, we gave you 30, 40, 50, $70, USB-C YubiKey that went into your laptop. Please return it, to us when you return your laptop.
Yeah, with the laptop.
They could then,
maybe like the little nano ones that just kind of fit into the computer, right?
Yeah,
they're hard enough
expensive,
to remove. Yeah, and they're expensive. But I don't know, because personally, I think I don't think it's worth asking for them to return unless for some reason you have unusually high turnover. Like what is your ROI on keeping a security key of somebody who's been at the company for 3 years?
I don't know. You could probably wipe them, or could you wipe them, or just reissue them? You could reissue them. They would have somebody else's key, but you have no way of accessing it.
That just feels, because that's the thing is people tend, and this is just realistic, right? People tend to do the thing that's easiest for them, right? This person from the Okta breach, right? They saved their work password in their personal password manager, Google Password Manager, because that's the easiest thing to do, right? And because it's like a fail-safe, right? You daisy chain this stuff together. You only really need to know one password, whatever. But the thing with physical keys that I've noticed, because I have tested so many different hardware keys, at one point I had 6 different MFA methods on one account.
Wow.
And I was only actively using 1 or 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it was to me, it's like, is that safe? Right. Any of those keys or any of those methods could be compromised at any time. And I have more than I need.
It's only as safe as the weakest method. So
right,
if you had 6 physical security keys, but you still allowed,
4
phone-based
keys,
MFA,
1 device-based key, and
and a phone MFA or whatever. So if you were getting a text message, then it's only as secure as that.
I don't know. Have we mentioned it before? Don't use SMS as MFA. And in fact, if you have one of those apps that's like really important, but they like for some reason will let you use SMS as like a backup version, see if you can get that turned off.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to do that now. This is a good segment into why you should turn it off and how now you can, because previously you couldn't. It was only up until August, wasn't it? August, September time, or maybe earlier this year. Maybe it was earlier this year.
You could turn it off for what?
Google Authenticator would sync to your Google account. So if you moved from one device to another, the reason to keep SMS-based authentication enabled for some accounts is it is like it will work. It is a break glass, way to get into your account. It is probably I do have concerns.
Insecure.
I do have concerns about having accounts where I can only sign into it with an MFA. I'm less worried now because
I'm less worried now.
Google Authenticator
I will say I used to worry about that a lot, and then I had an incident where I changed my phone, and they basically forced me to wipe my old phone before I could use my new one, and I was like, "Are you crazy?" Because like have you ever heard of MFA? Because like I can't do that. And they were like, no, we insist. And so I literally ended up having to just message my team and be like, hey, all of my MFA is going to have to be reset because I just have to do this right now. But where was I going with that? Nowadays, so after that happened, I switched to Authy because at the time Google didn't allow you to sync.
Yeah,
that's what I had been using. So I switched to Authy, and now I've been on Authy forever. But then Google came out with the ability to sync, and I do highly encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more convenient to have one that does sync. But I will say, whatever password you're using for that account, it better be the best one you have. There are some accounts you should protect much harder than others. Much harder than others. Obviously, as an admin, our super admin accounts are one of those. But also your main account, whatever you're using for your password manager, whatever you're using to sync your MFA, all of that kind of stuff, that should be the stuff. And that's why I'm saying going back to the OctaBreach thing, right? This person was a little bit negligent about the fact that clearly they were an administrator. Clearly they had some level of elevated access. They clearly did not apply sort of the common sense security rules to their own account because their own account got compromised.
Yes, their own account should have had
We
MFA.
have to do this in our personal lives too, especially if we're going to make decisions like that, which is I'm going to sort of link my personal and my work life.
I do wonder, and I'm not sure if it was properly identified, it might not have been in any of these articles, whether the syncing of their corporate data to their Google account was intentional. I think it could have just been accidental.
You think they accidentally saved the password to their corporate account?
No, because I think they might have unwittingly, unknowingly signed into Chrome as using their personal account. If they were using Chrome and weren't signed in for whatever reason, then, were doing all their work stuff, and then was like, I'll sign in and check my work email.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, Chrome then, syncs to their account. I know it can be done. I've seen it. Or they open up a new profile or a fresh install or whatever. They think, I'm just signing into Gmail, but not realizing they're signing into Chrome. By default, Chrome's going to, prompt to save those passwords.
Right.
It will
It's going to
save
try to
it. They
sync
might
you.
not.
Yeah.
They
I
not
guess that is
but,
one option. The other option I was thinking is it is very common for people to log into multiple Google accounts in the same profile. I've seen this a ton with users, and it does cause a lot of issues because they kind of constantly will get, if they open a Drive file and it links to another account that they're logged into, right? They'll get no access, or there's just a bunch of things that happen. But because of those kinds of problems, I know that it's very prevalent that people do this. And I always tell them to please cut it out. Use different profiles, keep them separate.
Yeah,
because you don't want to cross the wires. You don't want to do that because accidents do happen.
Yeah, and I've had that problem myself with not using profiles and being signed into multiple accounts. You accidentally end up creating, you go to sheets.new to create a document and then start working on it and then realize, oh my God, it's my old Gmail account which I was using for testing rather than my corporate account.
Right.
And then you have to scrub that account.
Yeah, even if you have to have 12 profiles when you're doing something involved and complicated, it's worth doing.
Yeah,
it's worth keeping those things separate and sandboxed from each other. Big stuff. I think just to sort of wrap us up a little bit, I wanted to talk about how we deal with a breach like this in our organizations, because I think obviously this one's very public. There's been a lot of news articles about it. If you have developers or tech savvy folks in your organization, chances are they've heard about it. They may even, if you're an Okta customer, they may have a lot of questions, right? I know this happened with the Atlassian breach way back too. Any organization that had Atlassian had to deal with sort of a lot of questions from their staff. So
clients and customers could have reached out.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what do you consider is a best practice for notifying your organization about a breach like this? When do we say something and when do we not say something, Colin? What do you think?
That's a good question, because it depends on the severity and the impact to your business.
I would say anything that's high severity warrants a message at minimum immediately without prompting.
Yes.
Yeah. If you determine that there is an impact, you probably should tell people.
As long as it's, correctly drafted, you have C-level buy-in with the approval for the messaging and etc.
You can war room it a little bit, obviously.
Yeah, certainly. The difficulty is having accurate information, and whether you just, inform users that something has happened and, we can assure you that, our systems are secure, or we don't use, X, Y, Z, or we only use part of, Y, and that isn't impacted in this breach at this time from what information we know. I think the problem with this Okta one, using it as an example, is different pieces of information came out from different, large-scale impacted customers, providing additional information to what the primary vendor Okta was sending out. So, yes, it depends on your business, the scale of it, how much is going to be impacted. I would, if it was me, I would probably wait for a bit more information to give really clear guidance or update to the users.
Right. Well, and in the case of the Okta one, for example, right, there are vastly different scenarios about what the level of impact is. I would say this is just the way that I've approached it in the past, is if if you've determined that the severity is low, right? Like that you're fairly not impacted or fairly low impacted, and you've spoken to all the relevant people, right? Your security teams, your leadership, that kind of stuff. I would say you don't really need to communicate about something like this, except if you start getting a lot of noise about it, right? Like different organizations sort of behave differently. And in some organizations, it's sort of like how you determine if there's an incident, right? Like an internal incident, right? After like one ticket, okay, 2 tickets, 3 tickets, right? Like the more people talk about a thing, the more you realize you have to respond to it. And I think this is very similar. So, a highly publicized data breach, even though we've determined that the severity is not bad, if people are talking about it, if people are making noise about it, if people are asking about it, especially across multiple channels, in public and in tickets, like it can be better to just communicate, right? To sort of nip it in the bud, if you will, and like give a full explanation of like, here's the breach. We know, XYZ. Here's our assessment of it. And this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Certainly if you've got client facing teams or, customers, your staff.
Yeah. People who might ask. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If your clients are invested in knowing whether you're doing your due diligence, like it can be important to make sure your staff knows how we're responding to an incident. Yeah. Anyway, just like end on a fairly philosophical note there.
Yes. I think it's a good place to end. Otherwise, this could go on for a whole bunch of other discussions and tangents, and then become. I
know we covered a
very long episode. Yes.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and Colin, I will see you soon.
See you soon. Yeah. Stay safe, everybody. Sanitize your HAR files before your support team upload any to any ticketing sites.
And be careful with your personal Google accounts.
Yes. Give everybody a physical security key this Christmas.
Never a bad idea.